He's already got the grilling from Kenny in that 20 seconds about which part of the north side he's from. This is how it works here.
An acceptable part of the north side.
Well, every part of the north side is acceptable. We're just thinking, how can he elevate himself, like from a snobbish point of view, from Drumcon? There's not too many places you can go. Then of course, Keith Andrews sprung into mind, sitting on his 10 acres in Howth Head, and I thought, well, that's probably the only place. That's probably the only place you can go from there.
You should just make sure that Chris knows you're from Blessington Street.
Dorset Street, that's right.
Yeah. So it's Anyway, how are you?
Lovely part of where my wife works there. It's a solicitor on Dorset Street.
Yeah. It's all good.
You don't go there much anymore, do you? No.
No, I do. I walk through most times I'm over. Yeah, my old house is still there. Nostalgia, bit nostalgia.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We want to talk a little bit about how this fight's going to go,
and
just been watching a bit of analysis of how McGregor kind of traps people. So the analysis of the Aldo fight lasted longer than the Aldo fight. But his technique in that is nearly flawless. In that,
somebody was drilling out the back as well. If you watch, he's actually drilling the shot before he walks out the fight over and over again, because it's something they picked that was going to be a shot with Aldo if he came rushing forward.
Right.
I don't see this being the same, as in, I think Khabib would be a lot smarter. Aldo would have been of the impression that he could outstrike Conor. I don't think Khabib has that in his brain at all. I think he knows where he wins the fight, so I don't see him diving in with a big left hook and getting caught on the way in.
If you're Khabib, what are you drilling ahead of a fight like this?
He just needs to get a hold of Conor. That's his go-to. That's what he's done his whole career. That's where he's done his best work. But as you know from looking at it, it's harder to easier said than done with Conor. He can, even when you're watching him, it's hard to judge just how good he is at maintaining distance and controlling distance. And there's a couple of things that I've kind of taken from it. So there's, on Conor's side, he hits ridiculously hard, but if he manages to, I don't mean knock Khabib out early or hurt, even drop him early, but if he just stings him a bit and Khabib takes a backward step, that fight's finished. So if Khabib isn't pushing forward, that fight's finished.
Why?
Well, one, like we were saying, Conor's phenomenal at distance control, and if you ever watch his fights, that's what he does. He creeps people backwards. Khabib takes that backward step, he loses that momentum that'll get him in to get a clinch on Conor. So Conor will never rush in. That's the other option then. If you're moving backwards, someone might rush in and you can grab a hold of him. That's not going to happen with Conor. He'll stay at the end of his shots, which is longer than Khabib's. And he'll keep him just outside of range, but just where he can land, creeping forward.
That was almost the bit that we were watching, the analysis of the Aldo fight. It's so short, but there is 2 or 3 rangefinders where he's just defining the range, and he's actually stepping back to make sure that when he's coming forward, he has the power.
He also sometimes feints with a jab to make people think they're out of range, but he's not full extension, and then crack, big left hand. And that's his main weapon. People go on about spinny kicks and all the other. It's a straight left down the pipe, does it every time nearly, But for Khabib, the big thing for me in this fight is that Conor's a southpaw, so he's right foot forward. Khabib being left foot forward, and Khabib's best weapon is a single leg, which is very easy to pick up on a southpaw, because the leg is right there for you to grab with your strong arm, your right arm first into your left. So that's the danger for Conor, that he has to maintain enough distance to not let Khabib grab a hold of him, but be close enough to hit him. So it's probably the most intriguing matchup. It's the most excited I've been for a fight probably in the last 8 or 10 years, and it's a bit of a throwback fight to early UFCs where it's almost wrestler versus striker.
Yeah.
That doesn't really happen anymore. It's like but both guys are so good at their skill set, it's kind of come up again, which is really nice.
So what happens if Khabib doesn't take that step back, which I'm sure, we can see it here, he's going to try his best to not do that. What does Conor McGregor then have to do to avoid going to ground? Because we know once it goes to ground, it's hugely in Khabib's advantage, but actually getting him there, how well placed is he to get him on the ground?
Yeah, so the big thing for Khabib will be to, he's not, like a lot of people, and you've probably heard this analysis, throwing it back to the Chad Mendes fight. Khabib and Chad are not the same. Chad's a American wrestler, shoots big double legs. That's his. So he can come from distance and explode, and you can even see by his frame, he's that kind of guy, a little short, stocky guy. Looks like Lou Ferrigno took a poo. All right, but so then you have that body type, which is perfectly made for that big explosive move. That's not Khabib. He's like a grinder style wrestler. So he almost he's like a bear. He grabs a hold of you and mud. So he'll have to push Conor back. and get Conor kind of skirting the fence, which is what Conor does to most people, or get a hold of him and drive him there. If it goes to the ground, Conor in the Mendes fight chose to play very safe and just kind of get a guard position and relax. And Mendes landed some elbows, but not a stupid amount of damage. I don't think that's an option in this fight. So you can't.
Really?
I don't think you should relax on bottom against Khabib, because Khabib will just start to overtake. He's different at that. If you watch the Edson Barboza fight, was Khabib's last fight. He has Barboza against the fence, and Barboza's a phenomenal athlete at getting back to his feet. He's a striker. He's phenomenal at getting back up. And there's a moment where the camera's looking at them both, and he has a body lock, and Barboza's coming up the fence, and Barboza just kind of, it's like he knows the camera's there. He looks right at it and goes, and there's that look of, I've never felt this before.
Yeah.
I've never felt anything like this before in training or anything. So he's obviously a little bit different in that area.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I think it was Joseph Duffy on the 42 with his fight analysis, talking about that point that you make about relaxing under pressure, that apparently Khabib's pressure is so tough that you're almost better off just letting it happen, not trying to wriggle yourself free.
I think though, if that starts to happen, then it's Khabib starts to go ahead, he starts landing big shots, and then you have a situation, say that's happened for 2 rounds, now Conor's chasing the fight, and now he's kind of having to rush forward into that area we're talking about, where we wanted to maintain distance. He has to come in fast, and then he's getting caught with the takedown on the way in.
Okay.
So what you want is early, I think, like early pressure from Conor to get ahead, and I think for me, realistically, like that's Conor's best avenue to win the fight, is in the earlier rounds, like pressuring Khabib, making him move backwards and then starting to pick him apart.
Right. Like, what would that be like? So, if they got on the ground, how much of Conor McGregor's energy would that actually exert? Just the process of Khabib grappling with you and being on the front foot on the ground.
See, he doesn't. What Mendes does, Mendes stayed in Conor's guard, kind of throwing elbows from most. Khabib will stand up, cup your foot so you can't stand up, throw big shots from on top, and then look to pass. So constantly pressuring you. So the longer you stay there, it almost gets worse. He's like a wet blanket.
Right. No matter what you do.
Stuck to you. Yeah, he's relentless. He's not, like a lot of guys, if they take you down, they'll, if they get to a position where they can almost rest, it's like, well, I'm ahead, I'll relax. That's not what he does. He punishes you the whole time. So my thinking would be the best route would to be trying to get back to the feet to land that shot. You know what I mean? I think lying there and letting him control, and then all of a sudden you're 3 rounds down there, you're chasing, and you're tired. And that pop has gone out of your shot, you know.
How much can Khabib do to stop that shot happening? Because, of course, since Aldo happened, it's like the most famous move in world sports, that you don't let Conor McGregor get that swing at you. Like, surely there's something Khabib can do to stop that, but I presume it's far easier said than done.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of men have tried. He like I said, he has a way of making people think they're out of danger when they're still in danger, and he gets people on the back foot. That makes him really dangerous. He's, I've spoken about this before, he's like, I'm sure Kenny, if I said to Kenny now to pick the perfect athlete for football, he could describe what he'd want. Conor almost fills that for a fighter, for the striking aspect. He's got ridiculously long arms for his body type. He's a southpaw, which makes him awkward. His reactions are ridiculous. He's very athletic build, and then he has that pop. You train that, you get better at it. But there's guys who box their whole life that can never hit like Conor hits. You know, he just has. You're born with a certain amount of that. So
when you say the pop, you're talking about just the strength and the power of the punch.
Yeah, like if you look at Conor's hands compared to his body, they're huge. His wrists are huge. He's like born to knock dudes out. It's lucky he found this sport, you know. I'm sure you have the same thing with athletes. You see them that play football.
I understand what you're saying.
There's a kid, you're like, he's just going to be good, you know. He wouldn't even need to train as much as some other guys. He's just going to be good at what he does. And he has that little thing for striking that makes him scary. So he has that kind of one-shot knockout power.
Right. A couple of things strike me. Is there any way that McGregor can fight this fight on the back foot? Is there a way that he can be going backwards and still fight? Is there a defensive victory to be won?
Yes, I think he could win it like kind of just outside of range and landing shots and scaring, but he can't end up getting back to the fence at any point. Khabib will shoot. Okay. He'll shoot if he sees the fence behind Conor. He'll dive in the takedown, fail on it, but have him against the fence and then creep up into something else. So, I think. For me, and I've been wrong a lot, but for me, it's Conor early or Khabib by decision. I think that's the way the fight goes.
Okay,
but
right.
I favour Conor winning early.
Okay,
if I'm being honest.
If it goes the length, is that just because McGregor has rarely gone the length, and when he has, it's been difficult for him?
Yes, and just the like his tools don't lend themselves to a 5-round fight, as in what he's best at. If he's landing it, the fight won't go 5 rounds.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't go 5 rounds, because if he's landing, if he's teeing off on those shots, or he's found his distance and he's controlling, making him move back, that fight's finished unless you're Nate Diaz and you're going with the Homer Simpson approach of I'll absorb more than he control kind of thing, But in reality, most guys, after a few, that's it, it's done.
And what's the difference between McGregor now, after so long out of the UFC game? Like, there obviously has been the Mayweather fight in between, which is a completely different discipline and takes you out of what you're training for this fight. Like, what difference does a layoff make?
It's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, he's striking, like his pure boxing has improved. Obviously, to fight what is the greatest boxer that's ever lived, probably, in Floyd Mayweather. It's hard for me to say that. I don't particularly like him as a human being, but as a boxer, he's phenomenal. But I know I would have obviously trained with Conor a lot, and I've trained an awful lot with Conor's wrestling coach. He's a phenomenal wrestling coach, so I'm sure he has the game plan sorted how to stop Khabib's takedowns. But I'm sure every striking coach that's ever fought against Conor has said, I know how he won't knock you out, and then he does. So, this is what's so... I've found this harder than any of the other fights Conor's had, to kind of be like 100% this is how he's going to win, you know? But
does ring rustiness, does that happen if you're not in for a period of time? Is there just a difference?
There's different athletes deal with it differently. So there's like some guys that would destroy. I think it comes down to a mentality thing, and I don't think Conor will struggle with that. You know what he's like. He's he believes he's the greatest fighter that's ever lived. And to be honest, if he goes out and does this one, it's going to be hard to deny.
In terms of stopping that, though, obviously you can stop that in your sparring sessions. Yeah, from what you've heard,
intensity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are the guys he's sparring with like?
Yeah, good. And he has Sergey there, who's the wrestling coach. He's had 2 really high level wrestlers in for the training camp. 2 Moldovan guys that were on the Olympic squad. So they're going to be putting it on him, and then he has all his usual training partners and his own Roddy, his striking coach, and all that kind of stuff. So he would have been put in some precarious positions. He's had Dylan Dennis over, who's a very high level grappler, jiu-jitsu guy. He's been over for the whole camp as well. So he's been put in some bad positions and had to fight out, I'm sure, through the whole camp. But honestly, it's the most intriguing fight we've come across in probably 10 years. And then it could be all over in 15 seconds.
Because Khabib is the perfect, if you were, the point you're making about McGregor being perfect for striking, Khabib is kind of the perfect foil, or... Yeah,
like wrestler, heavy top player, kind of. He's not like the American guys tend to prefer like the big double legs and stuff, but they tend to burn up a lot of energy fast. So if you watch the Mendes fight, by the time the second round came around, Mendes is destroyed. He's so fearful of standing with Conor that he's diving on big takedowns, but that's like trying to do a 100-meter sprint for 5 minutes and then having to come back out and do it again.
You just get knackered.
Yeah, it's such a big movement. You're moving you and another human as fast as you can, in a big explosive movement. So Khabib's a little bit more relaxed about it. He tends to come in, body locks you up. Apparently, I've never trained with the guy, but apparently he just feels like he's in a team called the AKA, American Kickboxing Academy. Luke Rockhold, Daniel Cormier, all these like ridiculously high-level fighters. And the things I've heard from the camp is that he never loses around against anyone. He's just an animal. He's an animal. So it's intriguing. But it'd be hard in our gym to see people take a round off Conor. So it's the same, it's the same thing.
I was just about to say, that's certainly one of the similarities they share, because we've heard things over the last couple of weeks about Conor when he loses in sparring or has a bad sparring session. It's not pretty by all accounts, but that is ultimately the standard which he holds, which takes him to the level that he's at. Yeah,
and that tends to be the same with athletes across the board that are ridiculously high achievers in their sport. They tend to have that mentality, But it's a scary fight to call. I do feel I feel like Khabib has been so good. He's never been beaten. He's been so good in his fights that he might underestimate that power, and he might get a little bit cocky. And then when he gets hit, it'll be that kind of, oh wow, who threw that? you know, and then once that panic sets in, you're done.
Yeah. So
once you take the backward step, that's what I mean. Once you go, that's it. He'll eat you alive. That's where he does his best work at that range.
So the significant advantage that you would say McGregor has is the black ops, and that he is the superstar of the sport, and this has kind of been engineered for him. Like, does that matter if you're Khabib, or does that actually inspire you even more?
But again, it comes down to the athlete, you know. I'm sure like Kenny's been part of some teams, Irish teams in particular, that have gone out, and obviously there's been something gone on in the changing room, and the lads have gone out and performed far better than they should have. There's no offence to you as players, just that you're beating teams that are you probably had no business beating, you know, because
that can be negative as well, Chris,
Yeah.
in terms it can change your mindset, in terms of the emotions can get too ramped up. I remember coming out of dressing rooms, managers really pumping the players up, banging on walls, opening the doors and literally throwing people out of the dressing room, and that never really worked for me. Emotionally, when you get yourself to a point where you're almost out of control of your emotion, you lose that little bit of focus and inability to keep your emotion, the adrenaline in check. You've almost got to manage it. Those adrenaline surges, which in experience,
if you're younger lads, you're going to be in trouble.
Use it to your advantage, but not to your kind of detriment.
You go out in the first 15 minutes and go bananas, and then you've nothing left.
But even in terms of clarity of thought,
you're not picking the right things. I remember clearly, like, and it'll be interesting to see the walkout now if you watch the Alvarez fight, which is probably one of Conor's best performances. So everyone talks about the Aldo fight because it was just such a clean knockout, but the Alvarez fight, he picked them apart, stopped the takedowns, and then finished them. You can see Alvarez as he walks out starting to fold. You can see him start to go, oh my God. He's never been on this stage before. Conor brings something different. It's a circus, you know, it's huge, it's massive. It's the biggest fights the UFC have ever had, the biggest pay-per-views they're ever going to do. This is going to be easily the biggest pay-per-view they've ever done in the history of the it's going to be the biggest pay-per-view in the history of the sport. So is Khabib going to be walking out? He's been great all the way up to now, but the eyeballs haven't been the same as him. Is he going to be able to handle that pressure on the night, you know?
It's an exponential explosion of Khabib Nurmagomedov's profile, really, isn't it?
Yeah, the same with Nate Diaz. Like, the truth is that when Nate Diaz is a good fighter, but not a phenomenal fighter. But because he's done well against Conor, because his style, as in he can take a lot of punishment, has lended itself against Conor's style, people now think he's amazing. But he's not. Like, he's a very average guy, a very average kind of top 10 guy in the division. He was never a world beater.
The Diaz fight was a lot about the timing and the weights, right?
Yeah.
Like, is any of that an issue this time? Is Khabib the right weight for McGregor? Is he fighting at a weight that he's going to be maintaining his power and his litheness and all that kind of stuff?
So I think Conor's Conor when he would have burst onto the scene was fighting at featherweight, which is 145 pounds. Conor was too big for the division. I do remember the early cuts. He was grey and he looked...
Yeah, he looked so sick.
Yeah. So he's fighting now at 155 in this fight. I think he fought Diaz the first time at 170.
Yeah.
So I think that 155 was like the...
That was his ego getting a little bit the better.
Yeah. I think 155 is the Goldilocks for him. You know, that's the perfect one. And I think that's where he maintains everything. Like, as in, his cardio's good, his power's good, you know, everything works. I think 170, he's too small. And I think 145, he's way too big.
Yeah.
So he's kind of... I think Khabib struggles at 155 to make weight, has done in the past. So he could have a bit of a struggle for the weight cut. If that happens, that's a big plus for Conor.
Because that's been the big discussion as well, because with a couple of the interviews McGregor's done over the last week about what his path is in the UFC. It's strange that we're actually talking about that, considering this is probably one of the most, probably the most excited any of us have been in terms of an actual tactical breakdown, but still we talk about the future of Conor McGregor in the UFC. And McGregor fans are going to have a big eye on the co-main card as well between Ferguson and Pettis. And I'm not sure, do you have more of a capability of giving an accurate prediction on that one? Is that less tight, from what you're looking at?
I think that's a phenomenal fight.
Yeah.
I think the last two fights of that card are amazing. I think Tony's amazing. He's a crazy person. If you ever hear him talk, he just goes in these rambles. But he's a phenomenal fighter. Pettis was like the man back in the day. When WEC merged with the UFC, he was supposed to be the next big thing. They were building him. He's on Wheaties boxes, all this kind of stuff. And then it just kind of fell apart. And now he's had a resurgence. So he lost a few in a row. He seemed to lose the want to fight. He was kind of just showing up for paydays. And then obviously something's happened in his life that's brought him back. I heard him talk recently and he seems to be in a good spot. I think on the feet, Pettis has the advantage. On the ground, Ferguson has the advantage. But I think Pettis might surprise people in that fight.
Like, overall, the lightweight division is looking pretty good at the moment.
It's always been a very good division. It's probably the the average size for a human being. So
Sure.
like, you know, they're meeting at 155 pounds, which is 70 kilos. Most guys are from 70 to 80 anyway, so you're getting the best athletes in the world competing at it.
Should they have more weight classes? I know McGregor was calling for that earlier on this week.
I think as a fighter, I'd like them to because it would make my life easier. But as a fan, what you'd have is, say, look at that division and it'd strip in two.
It's diluted.
Yeah, so I don't think there's enough. I think it kind of, even when you look at boxing, it's hard to even know what division guys are in. There's like 3 pounds between them, and they're all jumping and changing and chopping. I think the way things are is there's a company called ONE FC in Asia, and they do things a little bit different. So they do hydration tests on you coming up to the fight to make sure you're not cutting too much water. I think that'd be good to bring in, and then people will just fall into divisions naturally. It'll still be the same amount of guys in each division, but they just be in, like, the guys that fight at 155 might be at 160, and all of them be at 160.
Okay.
You know, so it'd still be the same amount of guys, but it'd be less dangerous. That'd be a better thing, I think.
Loads of comments coming through. Cian Carroll says, Chris Fields absolutely brilliant here, breaking down Khabib McGregor. The Mayo Don says, as a long-term fan, I'm super impressed how much depth you went to and avoided the clinch questions. The clinch questions, we shouldn't have asked them, apparently. What's next for McGregor if he wins, asks David Keogh. Does he stay in the UFC? It's a big question, right? Like, frequently from the very get-go, the very first time anybody ever meets Conor McGregor, he's like, look, I'm in this for the money. I'm not in this for anything else. I want to get rich. And now he's rich.
Yeah.
Why is he still in it? And so that's the unknowable, and we'll get to know in the middle of the second round, if it goes that far, if he still wants to be in it, and if he feels like, actually, I'll pay my money. I'm happy now.
Yeah, it's not all about the money. That's a bit.
He says it's not about the money.
That's almost it. Well,
That's what he
McGregor said this.
at the start.
I know it's an easy thing to say. It's got to be more It's got to be more driving than that. Listen,
Well, yeah, like the truth is that you know as well. If you're all about the money, you probably never get there. Is the truth, because it's so hard. Sometimes you just go, this isn't worth it.
This particular sport. I mean, I know you're referencing my sport. Very little, if no similarities in terms of the group dynamic I've been involved in, and the individual nature of this sport, and it's absolutely ferocious. Like, you know what I mean. So
I don't think you make it to that level with that mentality. But there's an old saying from Mike Tyson: it's hard to get up and go running at 5 a.m. when you're sleeping in silk sheets. So, but I think Conor's looking at a legacy now. I think he's looking at what he's going to leave behind, and I think a lot of that money talk might have changed now, and the legacy talk might come in. He's had a son. He's expecting another kid. These are things you want to leave behind that your son will see and that they'll talk about. You know, that changes things. I know it did for me. It changed fighting.
Does that limit him to UFC? I mean, how good is he, Chris, as a boxer? I didn't see you'd know in terms of what you saw in the.
I think
against Mayweather. I mean, what level can he actually box at? Do you think potentially?
He competed at the highest level there against, like I said, it pains me to say, but probably the greatest boxer that's ever lived. Is he Floyd Mayweather's level? Probably not. Could he fight just below that? Yeah, I'm sure he could. And there's a lot of guys there that he could be competing with. I'd prefer to see him fight MMA. I think it's where he does
probably
his
going to
best
do
work.
that now. It looks like
Well, he signed a contract to the UFC, but the UFC would quite happily, I'd say, let him go have another boxing fight because they get a percentage of what's going on. So
yeah, so who knows? So you think he will stay in the fight game for a number of years?
He has signed a long contract with him. I think he signed a 5 or 6 fight contract, but he doesn't have to fulfill that. He can, you know, as in he can just stop fighting at any point.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like, if he wins this fight, he's then a 2-weight champion. He's probably made more money than he ever thought he'd make when you had that conversation with him. Like, you know, I'm sure he was thinking in the low millions when you said that, you know.
So maybe he thinks of wealth now as something completely different. He thinks of it as like Floyd Mayweather wealth as opposed to like.
You start to live a certain lifestyle, don't you? It's hard to and like prize fighters are notorious for it as well. Like, and then somehow at 50 they end up bankrupt.
Does he love the training, Chris? I mean, it's a funny thing to say, but some people do it. It's part of the job. They need to do it for obvious reasons. But some people absolutely love it. They just love it, pushing themselves in the gym. The amount of work you're talking.
He shows up to jiu-jitsu. You know, he'd show up to jiu-jitsu classes when he didn't have fights coming on. You know, he'd show up and just train because he loves training. I think from all of us, when we started, when we were that, like, there was a little select group of about 5 or 6 of us. There was like the opportunities were limited. No one from Ireland had ever done anything in the sport. It was underground. It had never been in a newspaper, never been spoke about on a radio show unless it was someone giving out
Joe
about
Duffy.
it. Yeah, I didn't know if I could say Joe Duffy. Yeah. You know, so it had no good light. So, you know, he was part of that. He was that group. So there's definitely a drive there, because you wouldn't have got past that stage. You know, if you were just there for it. So I'd imagine a few more fights, cement the legacy, and then call it a day.
One last thing there, you mentioned about having kids and how that changes your sense of everything in perspective. Andy Lee talked about that, sitting in that same seat, and how like he reached a point where he was like,
and he was a great boxer. Great boxer.
And like for him, it was like, do I want to continue doing this because it's so dangerous?
Yeah.
For you, that's not the case, obviously.
I do see that side of it. I'll always, like what Kenny was saying, I'll always train. To be honest, I like fighting. I love training. Yeah. So the training has always been my favourite part. The fight just gives me something to prepare for. So when I don't have something to prepare for, obviously everything's a bit all over the place. But if you just got to focus for 8 to 10 weeks, that's what you're going to do. So you'll train twice a day, no problem. Get up. You know, you have to eat well. So my plan is kind of to retire around this time next year, but I'd like to have 7 fights in that time frame, which is huge for a year.
Yeah.
Because I almost want to hate it by the time I'm done. So I don't want to go back. I'm 35 now. I'm smart enough to know what kind of sport it is. I'm not an idiot. So I know that a lot of guys tend to like be almost there and they go back in, and then they're still having fights at 40 and fighting young lads that are on the up, and you know, that's silly stuff. Like, you know, I just want to finish off on a high and just be done with it. That's
what level do you want to get to in those 7 fights?
I just like fighting. I don't care.
Right.
To be honest.
You're not.
No. To be honest, I was actually. I'm signed to KSW now, and they do like kind of like massive shows with like 50, 60,000 seater arenas. Some I've never been part of in my life. Walk out and you're like, what is this? You know, you would have had that every week probably. Like, but I like
once or twice in his life.
Yeah. And just the noise and everything, you know. But like for I know that like for that show, there's no way they'll have 7 shows that I can fight on. So I don't care about going and fighting a school hall in England. It's at this stage, just love the sport. I just want to kind of enjoy it. Finish
Will
it
you stay around it, Chris, in terms of training?
I own a gym and I coach at the moment, so that's the other thing that's starting to creep in. That I'm like, my guys are kind of, there's a lot of young lads coming through like Ian Gary and stuff, and they're kind of making a name for themselves on the amateur circuit in Ireland, and my time's starting to get dragged into that. And as you start to do that, you're going like, oh, well, I'm preparing for my fight. You have to be a little bit savage, but it's difficult because, you know.
Yeah, that's a natural avenue for you.
Yeah, definitely.
SBG and Swords.
Yeah.
Have you seen an uptick just in the last couple of weeks as the...
No, we've been pretty good for the last, I think the sport has just kind of hit a point now where it's known,
it's constant.
The lads that want to do are going to it now, you know, they don't really like just hear about it because Connor's fighting anymore. Yeah. That would have been, back in the day, that would have been a big thing.
Is there a crossover? Like, is there a kind of, because, you know, around Wimbledon every year, the tennis clubs automatically report numbers surge through the roof. Is there extra interest beyond the baseline?
Like I was saying, there would have been, it doesn't seem to be any, we've a regular kind of amount of guys that are joining up a week, and that would probably stay the same, you know. But a lot of them guys, anyway, a lot of that kind of, they come in, they're like, oh, I want to be like Connor, that's... You know, 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, mate. The worst is when lads come in, they've never trained before, and they walk in, they try to stand like him and move like him, and just like, well, I'm doing this since I was 6. I can't stand like him and move like him. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Great stuff. If anybody wants any more SBG Swords, is there a website?
Yeah, .com. And we're on a Facebook page and all that kind of stuff.
Nice one.